Hi, I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, host of Highly Sensitive Money. I'm a money coach, certified financial planner, and a highly sensitive person who brings money and social justice together. If you're someone who feels deeply, can endlessly think through how one decision affects everything else, or has ever struggled with all the things that traditional financial thinking leaves out, you're in the right place. In this show, I chat with highly sensitive people on how they handle their money, and with money experts on how they cultivate social justice in their work. Questions? Please go to allthecolors.net and schedule a free 30-minute call. And I'm happy to share resources on investment management, money coaching, workshops, or anything else money and social justice related. Join us in this episode as we explore money and sensitivity while honoring that all of our well-being is interconnected. Anne Symens-Bucher has spent 15 years learning what it truly means to ask for help and uncovering the relationality in fundraising. Anne spent 20 years as Joanna Macy's executive assistant and co-founded Canticle Farm, an intentional community in Oakland experimenting at the intersection of faith, social justice, and earth-based activism. She shares how the simple realization, I can't do this alone, transformed not just her approach to fundraising, but her entire understanding of abundance, gift economy, and what it means to receive. Anne shares the intuitive and emergent way in which she's helped co-create Canticle Farm as part of her own spiritual expression. Welcome, Anne Symens-Bucher, to Highly Sensitive Money. I'm so excited to have you here, and I'm really happy that we met fortuitously when I was in Oakland. I came to Canticle Farms, learned more about Canticle Farms. It's such a joy to get to meet you, especially because I've been admiring Joanna Macy's work and your work for years and years. So it's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. We really had a great conversation when you came to visit Canticle Farm, and I was excited to get to follow up with you.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to want to just dive into the questions. But I think the best place to start is to introduce yourself. If you would mind introducing yourself and the work that you do today, and also how you arrived at the work that you do today.
Okay, I'm always challenged by, because we're such complex beings, and it's hard to know how to talk about oneself. There's many ways that I could do that. So let's see, how would I want to do it in this moment? I guess I'm in this year, 2026, I've realized that there's some significant things happening. So in this year, I will be married for 40 years. So I am I'm a wife, a partner to Terry, and that's been just one of the biggest gifts of my entire life, to have found him, to be on the path together, to have started this community, Canticle Farm, together. So there's something significant about 40 years. It's a very biblical number. So there's that. It's also 15 years, actually, since I started doing the fundraising to create Canticle Farm. And that also feels pretty momentous. And then I'm turning 69, so it's the beginning of my 70th year. That's one way I could introduce myself. Terry and I have 5 adult children, and 3 grandchildren. And that's one of the great gifts of my life. Those children, as teachers, continue to be teachers for all that I have learned about what it takes to live in community. It's been 20 years since I started working for Joanna Macy, and she died last summer. So it's very much the end of an era for me. My physical connection to her, I've known her work since 1984, and it was a profound influence in my life. And to get to work as her executive assistant for 20 years was a great gift. So those are some ways I could introduce myself.
I love this introduction because it's a snapshot in time and also like a reflection of the transitions, the celebrations. Congratulations on 40-year marriage. That's amazing. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
And you mentioned one of the reasons that I was really excited to have you on this conversation is your story about fundraising, how that got started and how that money conversation has evolved over the past 15 years that you've been fundraising. And I also want to introduce the fact that we're already linked through Morgan Curtis, who's a previous
Mhm.
guest on this podcast and who also lives at Canticle Farms, so part of fundraising there.
Yes, and one of my dearest people in my world, for sure.
Yeah. So if you could share about what led you to fundraising and how those money conversations may have shifted in the past 15 years.
Sure, thank you. Well, I like to jokingly say there's two kinds of people who have no trouble asking for money and people who don't like to, and I've always been in the second group. And yet I have found myself over the years doing fundraising, I've started some things and then done the fundraising for the things I started. Um, where I really cut my teeth on fundraising was with a campaign called Nevada Desert Experience, an organization, faith-based organization that was working to end nuclear weapons testing at the Nevada test site. That's where Terry and I actually got engaged. And so the fundraising I did there, like a large donation would have been $500, and it was a rare thing. It was mostly smaller amounts. And I often did it through event planning. We would do events at the test site and it was a nominal fee, but we would raise money by hosting events. And then I would put on concerts. So I had experience in event organizing and raising money that way. But when it came to getting Canticle Farm started, I knew it was going to be going in a different direction, like just needing to learn to ask. And I felt really clear that it was mine to do, even though I joke I would much rather have been the community laundress because I really love to hang clothes on the line. And I really enjoy doing people's laundry and hanging it on the line. So I was like, I'll just be the person to do the laundry. But no, it was very clear that I was supposed to be doing the fundraising. And so I knew there was going to be a healing. I think about like use my hands like on a personal level. And then while that was happening, I was going to be raising money. Like it felt like a parallel process for me. And it's very much been that. What I thought to myself in this moment of clarity was, I can't do this. And up to this particular moment, that voice had always been a voice of weakness. I was raised in the first generation of the feminist revolution, right? I was supposed to be able to do anything and everything and not have that kind of weak girl voice. I can't do it. So I had spent a lot of years of my life with this idea that I needed to overcome that. And so when I heard myself say that I can't do this, for the first time, another word emerged, and the word that emerged was alone. So at the end of that sentence, I can't do this alone. And that one word actually changed, like healing moves backwards and forwards. It changed. There was a healing backwards and forwards in my life. I'm getting choked up thinking about it because I actually understood the truth of that, the sort of the lie of the individual separate self that thinks it can do anything alone. The rugged individual that I'm just going to go out and overcome my fear I will just be able to, by whatever means. I was like, wow, this is just true. And it's always been true. Like nothing outside my window is doing anything alone. It's all working in a system. And this is one of the great gifts of the many gifts from Joanna, of the living systems theory, and just immersing myself in her work. So I was like, oh, if I can't do this alone, so that was the first healing, right? Then I must be meant to be doing it with people. So what would that look like? And I didn't have any kind of big plan other than I need to ask for help. And that was a very intuitive and emergent process. I did not sit down and make a list and say, let me go find these people. I didn't say, let me decide to ask until I hit a certain number or ask over a period of time and then stop. I just more intuitively, almost immediately found myself running into people. And I'd be like, oh, maybe I'm meant to ask you. And I would be saying things like, I was calling it a dream team because I wanted people to dream with me. And then it was almost like if I had my Olympic dream team, who would I put on it? And so I I mean, I remember running into a friend I hadn't seen for years in the grocery store. And just, I'm starting a dream team. And this people, and I would say, to me, it sounded pretty vague what I was asking people to do. Would you be on my dream team? Will you come support me as I try to figure out how I'm going to raise money to just like finally do this thing that I'm called to do, this community? And I ended up asking 14 people, and 13 of them said yes. And I don't remember how long I did that. I'm guessing it was a couple of months. So something in me was like, okay, that's enough. I've asked enough. I have 13 people. And then I had the second powerful realization, which was people just said yes to supporting something that was very vague. And look, people actually want to support me. There is support. There's abundance of support. There's this group of people now, and I'm not even sure what to do with them. But the fact that they actually believe in the vision was healing for me. So I called a meeting, and I couldn't even get everybody there. There were a couple people who came in through some kind of technology. I don't even know what it would have been then. It was before Zoom, but
It's probably Skype.
Probably Skype, yeah. And many people were in the room, but I never did have all 13 people together at one time. And we spent the day together. And I can remember at the time, one of the properties here that had been owned by friends and bought by other friends and was underwater. And I was like, I need to get this property back because things are finally starting to happen here. And I went to the friend who bought it from the friend, and I said, can you sell this? Can you sell me this property? And he said, sure, but I can't lose any money. So I was in this trying to figure out how in the world am I going to get a bank loan, which of course you can't on a property that's underwater. But that started me thinking about who gets to decide what a property's worth. And for me, this property was priceless because it was contiguous to where I had been living for many years. And the timing of it, to let it slip away, had been, at the time, I was like, I can't let this go. But there wasn't bandwidth. There was no way that I personally, Terry and I, or we couldn't find people to buy it. So this selling it to this other friend who wanted an investment property had been the way to at least keep it off of the market. So now I was like, how do I get this property back? And I was talking about this with this group of people, and half of them were like, you need to not even think about that right now. And I don't know, it wasn't that I just deliberately decided to listen to people's advice. I can actually remember how I felt at the end of the meeting. There was something, I just felt like I had wind in my sails. There was an experience of liberation. I don't even know what just happened at this meeting, but I feel on my way, like I'm going to go figure this out. And over time, that group of 13 people got much smaller, down to maybe 4 or 5, and then it was more just sort of personal relationships. But just the idea that I didn't have to be alone and that there was support. And then one of my cousins, who ended up being a financial supporter and donor, and was very actually, probably in a lot of ways, not somebody who would have ended up supporting Canticle Farm, but he loved me and believed in me. And there's like the familial connection. And he said to me one day, you are already further along than you realize. And you have to have your own sense of what you're doing, catch up with where you are. And that was a key moment for me of, oh, wow. Yeah, I'm actually further, like it was instructive and revelatory. Oh, something is actually already happening here. I'm not starting from scratch. There is something that I can say to the world that's happening here that people want to support. So that was a significant moment. And then I think another key learning early on was really learning to trust and believe that people wanted to contribute. And how did I know that? Because of my own desire to contribute. I know I want to contribute. That's a human experience, to want to contribute. I was able to really lean into trusting that. And then it just became a case of, okay, I just have to find the people who want to contribute to this particular thing, like a treasure hunt or an Easter egg hunt or something, that they're out there and you just need to start looking. And it's been such a grace-filled and emergent and miraculous process of these last years. And I guess if I were to just pick one word that characterizes everything, it would be relationship. And ultimately, what I needed to claim for myself was I know how to do relationship. So just keep doing relationship. And if it's, there were obviously other lessons, like I needed to deepen in the trust that my job, as one friend, coach friend said to me, who does fundraising, this is a fundraiser himself, it's your job to ask and it's their job to say yes or no. And I think why was that problematic for me? I think at the core, it's the relational thing that I felt the last thing I would want to do would be to activate some kind of pain for somebody. And I just didn't want to be that person. But as I also would say that during these years of my fundraising itself has gotten a lot more sophisticated, and there's classes you can take, and there's approaches, tried and true, and approaches and a lot of that stuff just didn't really work for me or wasn't really appealing. But I came to realize that for myself, that when it was problematic for somebody, when somebody would ask for money, was when there didn't feel like there was a relationship, and it was somebody was leading with that. And it's not that you don't get money that way, because those we give for a whole lot of reasons, and sometimes maybe because we in the moment don't really think, we're telling ourselves we really can't say no, or there's some kind of sense of obligation. I really want people to give to Canticle Farm because they're joyful about it and it's something they really want to do. So working on the relational end of things to get to the point where I could talk with people about this and in this way. And I've sat with my two beloved friends who came to me through the work that reconnects, through Joanna's work. I met at 10-day intensives, who have been the largest donors to Canticle Farm. We've cried together over this on more than one occasion, just how deeply meaningful it is to be in relationship, and how for each of them, it's a gift to be able to contribute because they love what's happening here and they want to support it. And that I'm actually giving them an opportunity when I come to them and I say, this is what's going on, can you help? So mostly I'm hardwired now to believe that. There's still some little bit of queasiness, and mostly I really do see that's what's happening here when people decide they want to give. So it's just been very healing, just as I thought it would be, that back to the, and I like to joke about it because it's like, I have a metaphorical idea that at 15 years ago, I was ready to give it I'll get a bachelor's degree. I'll put the time in like it's a bachelor's degree. And then I hit a certain level of proficiency. And then I was like, oh, you got to go on to get the master's degree. Because whatever those, where it got more challenging and I had to deepen in trust, some of those lessons came along. And then I hit the PhD course for sure. 4 years ago, the house that Terry and I actually own here became uninhabitable because of mold, which has actually been a problem we have had subsequently with 3 other houses here. And I jokingly, I changed the password, mistakenly changed the password on the Canticle Farm PayPal one day. And when I went to put in a new password, what came into my head was mold will save us. And I thought that is such a crazy password for something that's actually so expensive to remediate. And yet I loved it because there's a gift in that. There's been a gift in having to deal with those mold remediations, and starting with the one, my house, because it was clear to me that Terry and I were not going to be able to fund this thing. It was beyond our resources. And then I was able to see that I had been telling myself that all this abundance that was coming through these relationships was for Canticle Farm, as if somehow I was separate from Canticle Farm. And that was revelatory. I was like, oh my, look at how I have been keeping myself separate. So it was like the deepest level of the healing to be, and I'm called forth to do that work because I want to be in integrity with what I say I'm about, which is if there's no separate self, if we're all interdependent and we're all connected, then how can I be putting myself over here in an isolated space and saying the abundance doesn't actually, I mean, I would never tell that to anybody else. I would and do tell people, of course you're part of the whole. Of course the abundance flows. Of course we're interdependent. So I couldn't think that way and still be in integrity with who I am and who I want to be in the world. So what it required was I went first to those two friends. And the first thing I thought was most people give through donor advised funds, and they wouldn't be able to do that. This is a person, we somehow, like the separate self again, we own this property as if it isn't also in service to the whole and part of the whole. But they both were like, that doesn't matter. We can find ways to support you and we want to. So that was like the PhD course, remembering that I'm a part of that as well. And so I'm about ready to retire with my PhD. And I think right now, mostly my dissertation, whatever, is that I really want to be having fun with it, because it really, Morgan and I we love to just and tell each other when somebody makes a donation or when we get brave and ask and someone says yes, or there's just so fun about it. Just so fun when you have a need and you ask and you find and people respond, and then it's, oh my God, look at this just happened again. We were able to buy a house in April, and we both figured that it was going to be mostly loans, because we've stumbled into getting no interest loans from people. It wasn't my original dream team telling me, don't try to buy. Some of the people, there were other people who said, you can't get a bank loan, but you could go ask people to loan you money. And I was like, wow, what a concept. And I did. And at that point there was a foundation that gave us a $75,000 loan. All the loans we had at that point were 3% interest, which was still great. But they didn't even ask for, what do you call it? Now I can't think of there's a name for it when, it was an unsecured loan. And I remember them saying to me, if you default on the loan, we don't want your property, so we're just going to trust you. So this has been this, in a relationship, right? What do you have? Trust. And so to be engaged in building those relationships and building that trust and deepening in those relationships has been just such an incredible gift and joy. And it is fun. So I want to be having fun. And it's fun to be scared and then find courage and do all my work and remind myself this isn't about me. This is about something bigger that I'm asking on behalf of. And it's my job to ask. It's their job to say yes or no, that people are going to do what they want to do from their own choice. So sometimes I have to shore myself up. And even the no's are fun. Because in some ways they're really fun, because somebody has really, then I can trust, especially when it's come from people who sometimes give and sometimes say no. When they say no, it's easier for me to trust the yes. Anyway, that's a lot that I've just said, but that might be the journey right there, the fundraising journey.
Yeah, the fundraising journey. And one of the things I'm going to go through and parse out what you've just shared with us. But at the beginning, you said that you asked people to be on your dream team with kind of a vague vision. And I feel like listeners who might be listening might have a vague vision of what Canticle Farms is. I'll share my experience. I was just there 3 months ago, and I was at a visit in Berkeley, and I was staying at a co-living, co-housing at a co-op. And then I visited your co-op, and there was another co-op that I visited. So it was like the East Bay, Oakland, that area is like a co-op haven. And Canticle Farms stands with so much respect in that community. And one of the things that I when you come into the property, it's so open, right? It doesn't feel like there's obviously doors, but it also feels so inviting. There's no fences. There's a sense of invitation. And I attended the liturgy, the open air liturgy, which was so beautiful. And as someone who's bilingual and who grew up in California, experiencing the liturgy so purposefully in both languages, the switching back and forth, the invitations, that was beautiful, such a joy. And especially because it was outdoors and it didn't rain, even though it looked like it was going to rain. and seeing all of the little houses in different places, and also learning from you that the vision of or one of the things that I learned about the Canticle Farms, and again, here I'd love for you to share more of what the vision was like 15 years ago and what the vision has transformed into today.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some things you shared about people experiencing like having to deal with immigration and undocumented status, people coming out of incarceration, people having different mental health needs, and like how do we navigate all of that as community living, as a co-op, as people paying, providing resources as they're able to. Like it's a different reality that is being experienced at Canticle Farms. And I'm sure it's not always easy, but it's also not always hard. Going back to that fun that you were mentioning.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. One of the things that I say is Canticle Farm is a platform. Our mission statement says we're a platform for the great turning, one heart, one home, one block at a time. And the great turning, that phrase comes, Joanna adopted that phrase to describe the time in which we live, where we are waking up to understanding that Earth is not a warehouse from which we extract resources and a place to then dump our waste, but as a living system, and that we're thinking differently, we're acting differently, we're in three different dimensions, holding actions, Gaian structures, and shifting consciousness. You can see the great turning happening. However, of course, at the same time, we have the great unraveling. And in her work, we choose to put our attention on the great turning. So that's what we're doing here. We're putting our attention on the world we know is possible and living into it as we can now. And I say we're experimenting at the intersection of faith-based, social justice-based, and earth-based nonviolent activism. So it's a reweaving of things that have been pulled apart. So what happens when you start thinking at the intersection of those three things? What is it? How do you eat? How do you grow food? How do you deal with your conflict? How do you make your decisions? So that's a lot of what we're experimenting with. We have a commitment to nonviolence and to restorative practices that is a non-negotiable to join the community. So we really lean into the idea that conflict is an opportunity to deepen an intimacy, and that really, of all the things that we need to learn in our world today in order to navigate what's ahead of us, the unraveling, the thing we most need to learn how to do is live with each other, be able to deal with our conflict and have ways to heal from trauma and ways to navigate conflict. So that has become paramount in terms of a commitment that matters to me, that I try to live into. It's been a very emergent process, and I attribute that to all my years of being around Joanna and living systems theory. And she'd talk about the four properties of every system, and through synergy, things that are wholes dance together, and something more than the sum of its parts that's more complex emerges. So she would say, when hydrogen dances with oxygen, who could have imagined that water would emerge? And so when I was I was traveling with her, going to a lot of 10-day intensives, and this stuff I was breathing it in through my skin as this community started to form. And the four buildings on 36th Avenue had always been contiguous, and I started renting here from a family back in 1982. But there was always an idea that these four houses could hold a community, because big, huge garden, four houses, like this would be a great way to have community. And there was never a vision from at the start of buying properties on Harrington Avenue. And ironically, we have more houses on Harrington Avenue now than we do on 36th Avenue. So those are things that have just, like, over the years, like a property would come on the market. Okay, are we meant to try to buy this? Sometimes we have decided to buy properties that are actually across the street. But mostly it's just been as the properties contiguous Harrington to 36th Avenue have come on the market. And each one of them is just a wild story. You just can't make this stuff up. It has come to be. And then, as I was mentioning, I think earlier, I didn't finish my thought. When we went to buy the most recent property back in the spring, and Morgan and I thought, this is buying a house without knowing what you're going to do with it, which is mostly what we've done. We have one time bought a property with an intention for its use, which was for an asylum program. But the other ones have emerged. So that's another thing that just fills me with astonishment and awe, that people would actually give toward something that they didn't know was even going to happen in the house. This is where my cousin pointed out, you already have something happening here that people believe in. You just have to see that. So we still thought this is not a sexy ask for this house. But we figured we would have loans, and we were actually, I think, between 2/3 and 3/4 of the money we actually were able to raise. And there were three contributions of $100,000, including from that cousin of mine who died in his 70s. And when he died, I found out that he had left $100,000 in his will to Canticle Farm. And it took 2 years, and it arrived right when we were buying the house. I just keep feeling him with me. He believed in me early on, and then even though maybe it wasn't so philosophically maybe aligned with some of what we're doing here, I don't know. I never really wanted to ask him, but he believed in me, and that money showed up right when it needed to. That's our fourth house on the land here that we're deep in mold, or maybe the fifth one, deep in mold remediation right now, because it was also full of mold. And I don't know where the money's going to come from, but I just know it will. I'm just trusting. Somebody just committed to $10,000 2 days ago, and we really haven't gone out and started asking a lot of people. So so here we are with these houses. I think there's 11 of them that comprise the community. And there's, depending on how you count, we have pregnant people in the community right now. We have 3 children who are one just turned 2, the other 2 about to turn 2, a 3-year-old, a baby just born. If you count all the kids all the way up through every generation, there's it's close to 50 people that are here, both in Oakland, and then we have part of our community is in Calaveras County at a place that we call Earth Abides in Sierra Miwok land. What holds us together, I think, is at this point, there are people who've been here for 10 years, 9 years, 8 years, which in a community that's 15 years old is like a long time. I don't think of us anymore as a young community. For a long time I did. And I don't necessarily think we're an adolescent community. It's not like we've gone from young to adolescent. I think we're more grounded now than we ever have been. And I think we're grounded in love and in relationships and in the healing work that has emerged for us to do, that a lot of it is around racism and healing the personal stuff within the community, between us and inside each of us, and then doing what we can to be addressing that systemically. We are a place where people come and find their soul work. And so one of our teachers, Bill Plotkin, talks about the work that is each of ours to do and calls it soul work. It's what is our niche? What is your place in the family of things, as Mary Oliver would say, or in the ecosystem? Who are you in the ecosystem? And we want people to be able to do with their lives what they came here to do. We think everybody was given something to do. And it's when all of us come together, again, the wholes that dance together. So that's the beauty of this place, right? There are just all these astonishing people here doing what is theirs to do. And when all that comes together, something more than the sum of its parts emerges. Yes. Did that answer your question? It's hard to say. What is Canticle Farm? There is no elevator speech, except to say that experimenting at the intersection of faith-based, social justice-based, and earth-based nonviolent activism, because those are our commitments to heal from the idea of the separate self. So we practice gift economy. We're committed to nonviolence. We have a restorative system. We're working to heal across all the isms of class and race and gender and intergenerational trauma, spiritual trauma.
And I saw that. There's this joke that I've heard before that we don't need a guru, we just need a live-in partner. And if I think of Canticle Farms, 11 homes, 50 people, there are 49 potential gurus for you to work with and live with and experience love through conflict, love through fun, love through all of the incarnations that it comes in. And Another thing that I'm hearing is so much of the time when we think of money, it's often such a linear process. 1 + 1 = 2. It very much looks like math. Throughout your story and fundraising, I've heard you say the phrase intuitive and emergent several times. And I wonder how money, which can be it can bring up so much trauma. It can be such a negative. Many people, especially I imagine a lot of people that come to Canticle Farms have experienced harm because of money at some level. How do you see, and here's a leading question, but I wonder if you're experiencing like a cleansing of money, right? You're recreating what's possible with it. Or does it feel more like a neutral energy? Like, how has your work in fundraising changed the way that you view money, if at all?
Ooh, I love that question. I already spoke about how like needing to hold myself in the mix has been part of it. And I think I definitely have money trauma. All of us do, I'm sure, in some way, shape, or form. Um, I've lived parts of my life. I was at the Catholic Worker, Dorothy Day and the Catholic Worker, where we embrace voluntary poverty. So, I mean, as a young person, I was not going to have money. I look back at a lot of those choices and I think I have a word blesskin. So it's when you take blessed and broken and put them together, you get blesskin. Because I think everything is just blesskin. There's nothing that doesn't have the blessing embedded in the brokenness and the blessing. You can't, and I had to make up, I used to say there's blessed, it's blessed and broken. Then it goes, no, it's more like blessed and broken. There's no, wait a minute. I need one word because I look back on those years of my life and I still struggle. If someone asks me, what do you charge? I don't charge anything. My work is a gift. And then I get to wonder, am I holding myself in the mix here? Or is it just easy for me to say no? Because sometimes I have feelings about that. Do I really want to do this as a gift? So I'm committed to it. And then I get to work on what's coming up in me around it. Fundamentally, I think it's that commitment is like nonviolence or the kingdom of heaven. These things are here, and yet they're aspirational. We will be doing this. I will be doing this work for the rest of my life. So there may be times where I can get very stuck on principle. And yet we have managed to walk that here as a community. It's challenging. And for me, like the one piece of gift economy that really is where I'm focusing is unhooking the exchange, the idea that if I do something for you, you have to do something for me. If I let you have this use of this space, you have to pay money for it. And I find that even just working at that simple, basic level has been mind-blowing for a lot of people who are like, oh, but what do you charge? Or, but give me an idea of what we would pay you. Like we do offer our space. A number of like-minded groups can come use the space, and we like to be able to do that. And then people want to know, how much should we give you? And we're like, no, it's a gift. And I like the example of if I invite you over for dinner and you're at my table for a meal, I wouldn't dream of handing you a bill on the way out the door. And you would be shocked if I did. And you may want to show up at the door with something. You may bring something. And yet you don't have to do that, because when you come to my home for a meal, I'm here to host you, and that's what I want to do. And you leave and you have been given a gift. And that gift, we don't have to do anything to have it move out into the world. That's just what it does. It just does that because you will have had an experience, will be more connected, there'll be relationship, whatever will have happened. You are not the same person when you leave, and that now becomes a part of you, and then you go out into the world. So gifts, sometimes I hear gift economy described as in a way that feels more kind of demand energy. You have to move the gift forward. I don't think you have to move gifts forward. I think they just move. That's just what they do, right? So even though sometimes it's hard, I do really appreciate the commitment. And it's also taken me to places where I don't think I would have gone otherwise, like around like who deserves. We have ideas of I was here first, so I've got this parking spot and I'm going to stay in it because I got here first. Or I've been working hard and I've been in the community for X amount of years and now I deserve to have my own room. Or there's ways our thinking has been so impacted by capitalism, right? By this idea that we pay for things. So it's big work to just even focus on unhooking the exchange and just be like, here's a flow in which we are offering a gift. And over here, we still need to pay the bills. And if you please receive the gift, and if you want to contribute over here to paying the bills, of course, I humbly and gratefully receive that. I used to like kind of block that. Joanna would do workshops here, and I was dragging her along on the gift economy experiment. But I used to pass around. I had a wrapped box with a $20 bill tied with a ribbon, and I would take a scissor and cut the $20 bill from the box, and then pass the box around. Receive the gift. This workshop was a gift. Receive the gift. And then have people like literally let me receive this, because we have a hard time learning to receive, right? Like some of us have a hard time learning to receive. So let's have that act of receiving. And then if you want to contribute, there's a place you can do that. The first time I fully did that, there was no money in the little box. And I had gone all out on this weekend workshop. Like we had provided the food. So I had actually spent money, right? And I can just remember just like chuckling at myself. Okay, here's some great feedback. People believed you, right? And then the next day, somebody who was there sent $1,500 or something like that. I've loved being in communities. And again, we were doing this with Joanna's 10-day intensives. Instead of charging a specific amount to pay her, or even calling it Donna, which still had, here's the amount you're asked to give. It was just give what you can give, what you feel you can give. And so she ended up getting more money that way. I mean, it consistently, because there would be people who would pay more than what we would have charged. And there were people who would pay much less, but it all worked out. So as I've had years of seeing that experiment bear fruit, that's been also really liberating, because it's very oppressive to have everything be quantified by money, including our work in the world. And that's been part of like my healing, I think, because I think I do have some gender trauma around money. I think I have some genetic trauma, Irish Catholic female trauma around money. And yet I don't want to choose, let me start charging to heal that. So it's complicated, right? It's complicated.
It's complicated. And again, some of the things that you shared, and like how Canticle Farms has evolved and been created, and how fundraising has evolved for you, as you mentioned a couple of times, you mentioned your cousin, you mentioned two specific people who were big donors, and you moved from like the $500 that you were fundraising for the first organization all the way to 100,000, receiving 100,000 donations. It's a huge shift. But I wonder also from the people giving, did it feel, because sometimes we don't take the time to acknowledge the gift and giving, the gift and being able to share. If you could speak a little bit to their experience or what you've heard from them on this giving.
It puts me in mind of another conversation that I had there was a donor who sent money when we were buying a property. And then as we were working they lived in Oakland, as we were working to create a relationship, they came for lunch. Then I was sitting the next time with her husband, and he's a professional fundraiser. So I was really enjoying having a conversation with him just about the do's and don'ts of fundraising. And I heard myself say to him, I said, I think there must be something wrong, because I used to just have all these small donations, and now it's just large donations, but there's not really a lot of smaller donations coming in. And he just looked at me, started laughing. He said, that's actually the goal of fundraising, is to continue to find donors who can write you bigger checks. And I was like, oh, really? And then we had been talking for maybe a half an hour, just like comparing notes about fundraising. And then he just leaned in. And he said, we want to make an ongoing commitment to Canticle Farm. What would be an amount that would feel good to you, kind of thing? And I was so taken aback, because I had been like having this one conversation with him, and then suddenly he's no longer a colleague in funding. He's a person that who wants to offer me money. And I heard myself say, and I I actually loved this because we had been talking about, there's this principle in fundraising that you should ask for a certain amount, because people, if you don't ask for a certain amount, people won't give you as much or whatever. It's always, I've never wanted to do that. It just feels so manipulative or something. I don't know. It's just not me. It's not me. So I just looked at him and I said, I don't know, because I don't know what you can give. And that felt so moving and so authentic to me. Like, I just think about that conversation. And to this day, I mean, these people, I just love them so much. We go at the end of the year and drop off gift bags to our donors. And it's always just fun to reconnect with people. And I find myself just speechless, really. I don't even know how to thank people. That's a whole other thing. But back to this conversation, that felt so authentic and so true. Like, we were at this moment of just real intimacy, of him being like, because it's intimate, right? It's so intimate. And he's like, we want to support you. What would be a meaningful contribution? And I'm like, I don't know how to answer that, because I don't know what you can give. And so then he started just telling me, sometimes we give 5,000. There's an organization we give 10,000 to. There's one that I used to work for, we give 20,000 to. And so that was so helpful to me, right? Like, to hear, because of course, one person's $100,000 is not the same as somebody else's $100,000, which is, again, to go back to my Franciscan and Catholic Christian roots, like the widow's mite. We have monthly donors who give $10, $15 a month, $20 a month. And I am just as awe-inspired by those people as who year after year just support us every month. Their donation comes in, I'm like, they've got our back. They are there, they're with us. So the amount matters and it doesn't. It's what matters really is the relationship. But it was so significant to find myself in that depth of intimacy. I just felt it as really intimate. And I think I said, this feels so intimate to be talking with you like this. And then I said, well, let me talk to Morgan and let's see what would make sense. And so then we came back, and I think we proposed, I don't even know, $20,000 over 4 years or something like that. And they were like, yes, we can do that. So I don't know why that came to me as the answer to your question. I've forgotten your question, but you were asking me, what are those conversations been like?
What is it like? What have you seen on the side of the giver, right? What is it like for donors to give? And you're sharing, you're talking about that intimacy, right? There's this joke, and actually it was a study that was done that, like, there were these social science researchers at a park, and they were asking random people about, like, their sex life. How many partners have they had? What's their favorite position? And then they started asking them about their money life. How much debt they have? What was their income? And people did not want to talk about their money life. There were a lot of other areas in their life that we would think are very intimate that people were much more open about. I hear that with the intimacy of talking about money.
That's funny, because I have this cute thing that I think sex on the first date, you can have a good time, but it's not the same as having a relationship. And it's like that with asking for money. Are we going to just go for it here before we barely know each other, or are we going to actually get into relationship and do it from that place? And so it's different. And the friends who I've sat and wept with, that's just been so moving and meaningful. Yeah, to have that depth of connection and intimacy where they can show up and it's easy for them in some ways to be able to say yes. They've been able to tell me when it's not a good moment and when they want to put their resources into other places. So again, I think it's the trust that's part of the intimacy that takes time to, I don't know, I'm saying it takes time to build. That's true. Sometimes it can happen pretty quickly, though. You can meet somebody, and one of the people who gave us one of the $300,000 checks was a complete surprise. Someone who comes to liturgy. We knew the person was part of resource generation, but there hadn't been any kind of money conversation with the person or any previous financial contribution. And then here comes $100,000. So it's pretty awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, again, I do want to connect with what is in your question about the giver. I know that it's meaningful for people to be giving. And one of the people on my dream team who disappeared for years and years and has come back into my life recently, and I don't even remember how this came up, but the gift that she gave me was talking to me about how to receive money from people, how to receive a check. And I didn't realize until she started talking about it that I did have the habit of taking it, like, certainly, God forbid anybody would ever hand me a check with it face up, which mostly people don't do. Most of the time you get it, it's in an envelope or it's folded in half. So that's the first piece, right? Let's just not look at this because we can't quite look at this, right? But so I'm handing it. And then what I would do, thank you. And then immediately put it into my back pocket, get it out of sight, and then go back to the conversation because this is so uncomfortable, right? So when she talked about that dynamic and she said, you need to learn to receive the sacred gift that somebody's giving you. They're giving you a sacred gift and you need to receive it as if it's a sacred gift. So I've been practicing that. And I think you were there. Weren't you there? Yes, you were there. Yes, when I did that.
I got to witness that. I got to witness that.
You got to witness me doing that. Yeah.
And so someone gave you a gift. They gave you a check and it was folded up and you paused and you said, we're actually going to do this a way that like honors the sacredness of this exchange. Yeah. And you looked at the gift and you looked at them and you looked at the gift and it was beautiful. And it was also uncomfortable in a way that's lovely. But it's like when the first time that you say, I love you to someone, it's uncomfortable in a lovely way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting to start unpacking it, right? Because I'm not going to find out how much this check is for. It's not like the person doesn't know what they wrote the check for. It's not like we don't have feelings. So it's just, let's be with the discomfort so that we can neutralize it and just have it be, because it really is a gift to be given any amount, is somebody saying, I believe in you and this is what I can do. And I honor that. Whatever that process was, go through it myself. I don't write big checks, and I do write some checks to some places. And I think about it before I write the check. And sometimes I stretch past where my comfort zone is as part of my practice. So I know other people are doing that. Other people are doing that too. And I think that part of the healing that has been there for me is to see other people receive so much from being able to give. And then that works on me too, because of course I receive so much from being able to do the work that I do. The work that I do, the fundraising work I do, the work I do in this community that's unpaid. I'm certainly not doing it to get paid because I'm not, but I'm also doing it because it's mine to do and because I love it and because I want to contribute and because my life is full of meaning and purpose because of it. I have so much meaning and purpose in my life, and that is such a gift. So the gifts just want to move. It's not like I have to get up and think, what can I do with what I've been given? The gifts of the love that's here or the love that comes from the donors. Whenever I write a thank you note, I say it over and over again. We could not do this without you. We are here held together by widening circles of support and community. And it's a privilege to get to be held by that group of people, however much money they're giving and however often. We could not do this without you. And it's true. And that is, again, that inspires awe in me.
Yeah, going back to where we started, right? If I can't do this.
Do it alone.
I can't do it alone.
Yeah, thank you. Because I was about to say that right when you said that. See, we're on the same wavelength here. And I thought about it. I hadn't made that connection until we both just made it. Yeah, boy, am I learning that. And I trust it. It has really changed and transformed how I just trust. If there's always discernment about, like, for example, if a house is on the market, okay, is this the time or is this the moment or is this the thing to do? And yet once we make that decision, I just have 100% faith now that we're held by the larger community. And I think there's something I love to tell the story from the Indiana Jones movie where he gets to the abyss and he knows he needs to make the leap of faith, but it's too far. He can't do it. And he doesn't stand there and say, oh, I've got it figured out. It's the leap of faith. Now show me the way. He leaps. It's only when he leaps that the fog dissipates and he lands on the path that was there. We get asked time and time again to make that leap. It's in the leaping that the resources show up that are there. But we've got to leap. We can't just sit and hope, that it's going to happen. And often people will say to me, "Oh, I want to talk to you about fundraising." And I'm thinking, what would I be able to say? What could I tell you? I don't know what to tell you about fundraising. But I think recently I have come to identify that taking the leap of faith is a significant part of it, because there's lots of ideas, right? And there's always going to be an element of risk and jumping and trusting that you're held by something bigger. And Anna would talk like that all the time. We are held within the web of life, and from that web we cannot fall and we cannot fail. So 15 years of this experiment has really deepened my faith in that principle. I just keep seeing it. So it's possible for anybody. But you got to risk.
Yeah.
You got to find what's yours to do. That's the other thing. You got to find what's yours to do.
And I hear that at the beginning, you knew that it was yours to do, even though you didn't know what it was that you were supposed to be doing.
I knew it was mine to do, even though I didn't want to do it. That was the thing. It was like, oh, please I don't want to be the one to do the fundraising. No, let me be the laundress. But it was clear. No, I really had a sense of clarity about it. And then one of the huge gifts along the way was Morgan came into my life and started doing it with me. And there's always that moment where the student surpasses the teacher. And I remember from some mutual friends, they were telling a story. And Morgan had actually told me this story as well, that she was sitting with them and she said, imagine an amount that you could give, and close your eyes and each of you imagine an amount you can give. And they did. And then she said, now I want you to double it. And she's telling me this story, right? And I'm like, you did what? And then she's smiling at me. She said, and then I told them, and now I want you to triple it, right? And I was like, oh my God, Morgan, I cannot believe you did that, right? And then it was amazing to hear them subsequently tell the story of her inviting that. And they actually both had the same amount in their head, but it was tripled from their original amount. And that's what they ended up giving. And I thought, man, that is something that I would never have thought to do, Morgan. Good for you. So we make a great team. And working with Morgan, honestly, we've gotten to the point between Morgan going to divinity school and having a baby, and now she's got a full-time job. We just fundraise through telepathy or something. Now I don't even know how we're still doing it, because we barely see each other anymore, and yet things are still running here.
I love that. What a beautiful partnership.
It is. Yeah. And I don't take it for granted. There is a real synergy in the way that we've been able to work together. So that's part of you can't do it alone, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today. I think we were chatting about all the questions that I had listed, and instead we've just followed an intuitive and emergent path. And this has been such a lovely conversation. I'm excited to share this with other fundraisers that I know, to also have this as a resource. And again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your joy and for sharing about this intimate topic.
Thank you as well. And I also appreciate your joy. And it's been very fun for me to talk with you about it, and just giving me a chance to reflect and harvest some of the gifts of the gift giving and the gift receiving. So blessings on your good work.
This conversation felt so refreshing for my inner spiritual seeker. Anne's journey reminds me that healing our personal and collective brokenness reminds us to see the blessings in the brokenness. It's about taking the leap, trusting we're held by something larger, and being willing to practice intimacy in places we've been taught to stay transactional. Thank you, Anne, for sharing so generously of your story and for helping to bring about the great turning, one block at a time. Thank you for joining me on Highly Sensitive Money. I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, and I hope this episode helped you see how money and sensitivity can work together while honoring our interconnected well-being. We have the power to create a system where everyone's needs are met, because nature is abundant. If you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to leave a review and share this episode with someone who could benefit. Your support helps this message reach more people navigating their own financial journeys. A thank you goes to Mike Schul for the music and Juan Antonio Nunez for producing. For more resources on bringing money and social justice together, sign up for my monthly newsletter over at allthecolors.net. I also invite you to schedule a free 30-minute call where we can talk about money coaching, investment management, and all things money and social justice. Until next time, remember that your sensitivity and deep thinking is your superpower.